All attendees are in listen-only mode.
And we're just going to give others just about a minute more to join, and then we'll start our webinar. Thank you. So, good afternoon, and welcome to the inaugural of iKnow LLC's webinar series. I'm Lee Cohen. I'm the Director of Marketing and Partnerships for iKnow LLC. And we hope that you will find the presentation valuable and that you will join us for subsequent webinars. First, a little bit about iKnow LLC. iKnow is a management and technology consulting firm that helps businesses, governments, and nonprofit organizations to harness and unlock the value of their enterprise knowledge. Our solutions integrate strategy, content, business process, technology, and culture dimensions. Our consultants are unique problem solvers who blend strategy, technology, and industry expertise with a passion for knowledge management. Our team of senior consultants include several former heads of knowledge management from leading global enterprises, including Bob Armacost, who you'll hear from today. This expertise allows us to quickly gain the confidence of our clients and become trusted advisors. And we hope that if you want to learn more, that you'll visit our website, www.iknow.us. Regarding today's webinar, plan for 30 minutes of remarks followed by question and answer. Today we're going to hear from Bob Armacost, who is a Senior Engagement Director for iKnow. He brings extensive experience in management, consulting, and knowledge management with a track record of delivering significant business impact for two leading global professional service organizations. Bob most recently held the position of Principal and Global Head of Knowledge at KPMG, for whom he led the strategy and implementation for KPMG's global knowledge collaboration and research capabilities, harnessing the knowledge of KPMG's 160,000 people. Prior to KPMG, Bob served as the first ever Director of Knowledge Management for Bain & Company, where he led the build and oversight of Bain's award-winning knowledgement capabilities and tools. Bob is a former Air Force officer and has a master's degree in management from the MIT Sloan School of Management and a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from Northwestern University, also my alma mater. About today's topic, Bob is going to speak about enterprise collaboration. Good collaboration is the lifeblood of any organization and is a core focus area for knowledge management. Organizations have raced to adopt new shiny technologies in recent years with the hope of creating more effective teams and work. Unfortunately, many of these organizations have experienced disappointment. Bob is going to talk more about this and what can be done to overcome these challenges. And without further ado, I'll turn the mic over to Bob Armacost.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Lee, for the kind introduction. And it's great to have an opportunity to speak with all of you about a topic that is front and center to any organization, which is collaboration. And I've had the benefit of working in knowledge management in a number of businesses and now as a consultant. And so this is something I've seen and experienced firsthand in many places. And as Lee mentioned, collaboration is the lifeblood of getting work done in any organization. It is how work gets done. It always has been. And it's becoming much more important these days because the complexity of business and getting work done is harder and more challenging than ever. The pace of work is faster. There's less physical interaction and much more dispersed virtual interaction that people need to engage in. And there's a much higher bar for success in any organization, whether it's a corporation, a nonprofit or even a government agency. So, and this requires deeper and smarter teams and the ability for people to work together. Collaboration is also a key part of the knowledge management domain, and knowledge management historically was associated with content libraries and portals and intranets. And while that's still part of the discussion, so much of the value of knowledge sharing and the most effective way for people to exchange insights is through good collaboration as they get work done. Now, the challenge is that it's a mess in many organizations today, and over the past 5 to 7 years, there's been an explosion of vendors like we haven't seen since really ever, and there's been an enormous spend and adoption by enterprises on a number of these new tools with the promise of immediate business benefits, nirvana, et cetera, and the reality has been much different, unfortunately. And this is a complex topic because it involves not just technology, but it involves the business process, people, culture, involving many different groups inside organizations, including human resources, L&D, and trusted business leaders. And what we want to talk about today is, based on some of my experiences, but also many of yours, what some of the challenges are facing organizations and some lessons on how they can think about it more effectively. So that's what we're going to do. And in terms of process, after I go through the remarks, we are going to open the line for Q&A, and there is a process, and we'll instruct you how to raise your hand on the GoToWebinar bar a little bit later. But as we go through the discussion, if you do have questions that come to mind, in the GoToMeeting bar on the right, there is a tool for you to ask questions electronically, and we do encourage you to do that. And what we would intend to do and what we'll plan to do later in the call is to go through those questions because we do want to answer those. So as we dive in, feel free to, we want to really make this engaging and lively, and I hope you learned something. So in order to begin a discussion on collaboration, we actually have to define it. And in 17 words, this is how I define collaboration. And you see in the quotes, it's where two or more people work together in a collective determination to achieve one or more objectives. And again, there is not an organization in the world where this does not apply, and that this is a capability that in theory doesn't have to have anything to do with technology. It's really about people and getting work done better and faster. Often it's easy also to define collaboration by thinking examples. So what are people trying to do? And as you see on the right, these are some examples of what collaboration often means in practice. It may be finding experts, exchanging ideas or insights, helping somebody to solve a problem, and so forth. You see a variety of examples here. So it's everything about how work gets done, communicating, sharing information, etc. And any organization should care about it because it can help make them more effective. Corporations can make more money. They can work smarter, more efficiently at lower cost. Safety and quality can be better, and people in the organization can develop more quickly and be more engaged employees. So every organization needs to focus on how to help their people and their teams do this more effectively. Now, if we think about how to do this, it's important to look at collaboration in a little bit more detail. And the challenge is that it's complex to get your arms around because there are many different types of collaboration. And the way I want to do for this conversation for us to think about this is to think about collaboration along three different axes. The first on the bottom right is, what are you trying to do? And this could be everything from very informal things like exchanging insights all the way through very formal things like managing a project. So there's a vast range of different types of activities involved with collaboration depending on what you're trying to do. Secondly, who are you collaborating with? Is it just one-to-one, very narrow, or is it a very wide and dispersed group that may involve people you don't know? Thirdly, how are you doing it? Is it something that is done physically in a conference room or with people in the same office, or is it done virtually, which would involve a telephone or electronic tools? And that virtual collaboration could be real-time. It could be asynchronous. So if you think about it, these three different dimensions almost form a matrix of different types of collaboration, and all of these exist in every organization. And depending on what individual people are trying to do, they're going to involve themselves in different types of these. And left on its own, this obviously naturally happens. People are human beings, they're social beings, and they know how to contact one another. But in most organizations, this doesn't happen as well as it needs to. And there's a number of things that create challenges in making this happen well. One is that people are frequently not located together. They have to work from a distance. As I mentioned, this type of collaboration among people may involve lots of different types of activities in terms of what is being shared, what the output is, what the business purpose is. It often involves trying to find somebody that has expertise or experience that the person doesn't know, and that creates a challenge in just efficiency. Some of these may involve formal teams, but it may also involve people needing to come together rapidly for a particular purpose, and that's hard to do quickly when you've got people dispersed. And finally, a big challenge in many organizations is motivation and trust, and the need for people to feel confident and trusting in one another when they're working together and sharing information. So organizations need to be thinking about this and thinking about this holistically, need to step back and think about the end-to-end life of their employees, how business and work gets done, and how their lives of teams and people can be made more easily, or made easier. And the challenge in most organizations is there isn't anybody thinking about this. Often the whole concept of collaboration, it may be partially owned by human resources, but often it's owned by IT. Often it's just viewed as deploying a series of tools out to individual people's desktops that they are instructed to start using. And that's frequently not a path to success, as we'll talk about as we go forward in this conversation. And one of the first messages I just want to leave with everybody is that good collaboration is not just tools, but it's a business capability. Firstly, it's all about helping people to work smarter and faster together. Secondly, it's an integrated business capability that involves leadership from lots of different groups across an organization. And tools matter, but it's most importantly to align the right tools to the right task. As I think many of us have learned, a very significant tool for collaboration, email, which many of us use, is good for many things, but not good for others. And that's a challenge in thinking about how this can be brought together. And then finally, it's not only about helping people, but it needs to be focused on people so people can understand what's expected. They can understand what they have at their disposal, they're trained in it, and they're motivated to follow through and be an active collaborator and participant. We spend most of our time talking about a lot of these issues, but before we do that, I do want to take a moment to talk about some of the challenges facing enterprises, which is the explosion of tools. As we go through this, I think I want to illustrate this with a little bit of data. So if we go back to our 3x3 framework that I talked about, I want to talk about all the tools that exist in enterprises that people have at their disposal to collaborate with. And we've always had tools. So for those of you old enough in your working life to remember life before laptops and cell phones, our best collaboration tool was the telephone. It was great. It still is great. And even voicemail. That's a great asynchronous tool where people could store messages for one another. When I started in work, that was literally the collaboration tool that people had. That was it. Now we have email. It's been adopted as our primary collaboration tool. And again, it works wonderfully for certain tasks, but is limited for many others. And the success of social media and collaboration tools on the public internet, as well as the growth of web-based tools, mobile applications, et cetera, have spawned an enormous software industry. So there's a software industry for collaboration tools. It's more than $4 billion in sales today, growing at more than 20% a year. And there's a wide range of tools that exist that can help people communicate, discuss, share documents, share video, audio, etc. And you see in the red text here about 15 different product categories that are well established and well known in this $4 billion software market that all play a role in helping people to work together. Now, don't focus on the placement of where these sit in the matrix. They're really just there illustratively right now. But if you think about it, this creates a lot of challenges because in many organizations, they've deployed many of these types of things, and it's confusing for individual people or for teams to know what to use for what and how to be most effective at working together. And if you think of an individual employee who needs to get work done in a certain way, there may be 4 or 5 of these different tools that they have the ability to use, and they may be needing to know what others are using in order to know which one they're using. And we've just made it very, very hard for our people. This is also becoming complex because a lot of these capabilities are now being increasingly embedded into core infrastructure. So, you know, Google Docs was a great start in thinking about collaborative content editing. And that's those types of capabilities now being built into the core elements of the Microsoft toolkit and Office 365 and so forth. So this is becoming a really complex mess of tools that organizations need to sort out, and our people are expecting enormous benefits because they see the power of what they experience on the public internet, and they think there's a magical solution that can help them work more effectively together. And while there may be in certain situations in organizations, it doesn't always happen on its own. In fact, it never happens on its own. So let's talk about the growth of some of these tools just in a different manner. And this is a tool that shows the adoption across corporate enterprises over the past 10 years or so of a variety of different types of collaborative or Web 2.0 tools. And this is the output of a paper published last fall by McKinsey, which was a survey of 1,500 companies. And what you see, not surprisingly, over the past 10 years, is I think we've all experienced, is a race by companies to adopt a whole variety of tools, blogs, social networks, video sharing tools, wiki tools, podcast tools, etc. And this is happening, again, because organizations sort of see the benefit of what people are using on the public internet and think that there's the possibility of bringing these into the firewall and the potential to, you know, improve how people work together, spark innovation and efficiency and so forth. All great reasons. But those have all been reasons for people to adopt. I think one of the other interesting things that came out of the survey is the top motivator of adoption of enterprise collaboration tools by enterprises is imitation. So companies are seeing their peer firms or their competitors adopting these types of things, and whether it's just to keep up or to make sure that they're helping to win the war for talent of new hires, and particularly millennials, organizations are often just putting tools out there because their peer firms are. I'd argue that there's a larger tool, which you see on the bottom right of this slide, which is that businesses are fed up. You know, the pace of work is getting faster, the complexity of business, the need for higher quality and greater speed and smarter decision making is greater and greater than ever, and the businesses are fed up, and they're looking for something that's more effective than email to help get work done. And what we certainly see happening in many organizations is that businesses, from a bottoms-up standpoint, are adopting many of these tools outside of traditional IT. And so what that does is that creates numerous silos in many organizations with many of these types of tools being deployed. And that's obviously been supported by the fact that many of these new tools are cloud-based, and it makes it very, very easy for people to adopt it outside of a formal channel. And with the, again, much more pervasive acceptance of personal social media, it's become really a race by business leaders to sort of put these things in place. And so that's the situation we're running into, and you know, and when it's well managed and well thought through in an organization, this could be good, but more times it's actually not good. I think one other point I want to make around the technology landscape is that it's far from mature, and it's evolving rapidly. And let me just give you some sound bites here just to illustrate the situation. So in 2012, the market for enterprise collaboration and social software, studied by the Real Story Group, which is the leading analyst firm in this space, had 24 vendors listed on its subway map. So that's a lot of vendors that make these types of tools that enterprises need to sort through. Back then, social networking and social collaboration was the hottest topic. That's when Microsoft bought Yammer. That's also when Jive went public, and they had a market valuation of $1.5 billion. So this was a big time of evolution, of innovation and so forth in the social collaboration, enterprise collaboration and social software space. And what's interesting is that in 2015, and so this data was as of October, so just about 3 months ago, that subway map didn't have 24 vendors, it now had 38. And of those 38, 21 were new that didn't exist in 2012. So there's just an enormous churn of vendors and continued innovation while both the vendor marketplace as well as enterprises are sorting out what they want and what they need and what adds value. So this is a market that's far from mature. Also, the areas of largest focus and buzz have changed a little bit. They're a little bit more about team and project enablement, about expertise discovery, certainly about machine learning, and also what's happened recently is Facebook has launched an enterprise version of their tool, and some large organizations have already stated their intent to deploy that. You know, we'll see where that heads. The other thing that's really interesting is that Jive has lost 80% of their market value. So this is not a comment about the product or the company itself, but it raises the question of, you know, what really is the market and the valuation for social collaboration technology in general, and is this a product segment that will continue? Is it a reflection of something else? You know, who knows? And there's this company called Slack, which provides much more about kind of, you know, team collaboration and project-based collaboration in a social environment that now has a valuation of more than $1 billion and has experienced probably more rapid viral adoption among enterprises of any tool that we've seen in the last 5 years. And so it's a far from mature market. And what this does is this really creates a lot of challenges for all of you and for any organization looking to try to deliver value for their people. So I think to recap where we are so far, again, I want to summarize. This is collaboration is a complex topic. It demands really kind of strong and integrated business ownership, because this is a business capability. There are many, many new tools out there being adopted rapidly, and there's a lot of confusion. So what I want to do now is really take some of these thoughts and dive into one of the particular product spaces here to illustrate some of these challenges in practice and also draw some insights and some lessons out of it, and that's social collaboration. And the point of this talk is not to be necessarily an evangelist for social collaboration, but really to describe my view of what I've seen in this marketplace and some of the lessons and takeaways that have come out of it. Social collaboration has been rapidly deployed, as you saw from the McKinsey chart as well, with the motivation of and the promise of stronger collaboration and lasting business benefits. And that's because some of these new collaboration tools, like the social tools, bring a number of product features that don't exist in traditional tools like email. The fact that any user can be a content creator, the fact that many-to-many dialogue can be sort of set up and established on the fly with people that don't know each other. Users can control and manage what they see. Content can be retained for others to see and build upon. These are really cool features that, again, leverage things that have been in Facebook for a number of years for the enterprise. And the promise is a bunch of benefits that you see on the right, which are pretty compelling, and which organizations are looking to try to deliver all the time. Find an expert more quickly, solve tough problems more effectively, share good and best practices, generate ideas, create new insight on the fly, help make decisions more quickly by pulling people together when needed. And these are all really important things that every organization is looking to try to achieve, and these types of tools have the potential to do that. And there are many, many success stories where these things have happened, and I'll talk about a couple later. But the reality in most organizations is that they've not realized these benefits. Organizations who have raced to adopt these have expected large and immediate benefits, but they don't come right away, and often they're not as direct as people would think they are. And so because these tools are new, they're different, they involve a different behavior and different interaction among their staff than anything organizations have seen before. It's caused many businesses to adopt these, but then become disillusioned, and disillusioned quite quickly in some cases. Underneath the second bullet point here, these are quotes that I've heard directly from senior business leaders who have been involved with deploying these types of tools, not soon after the launch. So things like, this new tool seems like a waste. There's so much new content to read, and I wonder how much time people are wasting on it instead of doing their jobs. Or we've had this new tool 6 months already, and I don't see any benefit. These are some of the kinds of things that come out of business leaders' mouths who have deployed many of these tools, and this has created, unfortunately, a not uncommon pattern of disinvestment, and in some cases abandoning programs. This is something that we see more often than we'd like, and interestingly, in 2013, the Gartner Group predicted this would happen. They put a paper out that stated that they predicted that 85% of social collaboration initiatives by enterprises would not meet the business expectations of the companies, largely because of lack of leadership support and business ownership. So it wasn't a statement that they couldn't add value, but that they would not meet expectations. So this is something we unfortunately see more often than not. And let's talk a little bit about some of the things that we've seen, what we'll say is some of the common challenges or some of the common pitfalls that we see in organizations that don't succeed in this type of space. And again, this is what I'm not trying to assert is, I'm not trying to assert that social collaboration is the perfect answer for every collaborations issue, and it's not necessarily the perfect tool for every organization, but there are many places where it does, and I think some of these challenges and pitfalls, these would apply to any type of new tool. And what I want to do is maybe spend a minute and talk about each of these, and each of these are going to result in a lesson learned that we'll spend a minute talking about. So the first pitfall is that organizations often chase tools instead of building capabilities, and they don't first define how the new tool should be used by whom and for what purpose. This is something we see more often than not. This is the most common root cause issue. Secondly, and this is related, is digital overload. The fact that organizations have put so many tools at the desktop of their people that they're overloaded and they get frustrated and they don't know how email fits, and that just creates again lack of use and frustration. Thirdly, lack of business oversight over collaboration capabilities. This is something I emphasized earlier in the talk, and it's something that's really, really mission critical. An accountable business owner who's actually driving the capability. So not just the deployment of the tool, but training, culture, business process alignment, etc. And then finally, leadership. Unfortunately, many of these new tools involve a new and different way of working, and it requires patience, it requires commitment, it requires role modeling, and that's often lacking. So these are the common challenges and pitfalls. So I want to talk to each of these one-on-one and talk through some lessons learned. And against the first issue, the lesson here is you need to match tools for the right purpose. Instead of just putting tools out to put tools out, organizations need to actually think through in a pretty strategic and structured way, need to put together a business case and a clear strategy for what they view each tool to be used for and why. Thinking about business use and pain points, use cases and stories, particularly initial ones. You know, the good news about tools like social collaboration is that many use cases actually come out serendipitously. They cannot be predicted. You know, the organizations innovate and find new ways to use them that can add value. But in order to seed it to start with, you need some starting points that people can grab onto. They need an aha moment to say, I get it. And without that, many organizations and people are completely lost. That business case also needs to think about process, behaviors, tools, and think about success measures. You always want to be planning for what the success metrics are up front so that you can plot against that and know whether you've been successful. You want to do pilots, and you want the business users to be selecting tools, not IT. That's often, again, a big challenge. And as an example for this, I want to spend a minute and just talk about one example. So there's a construction company. It's a large global construction services company who, in their business, they have an enormous need for training, for documentation, for process. Many of it is for compliance, regulatory, and client service purposes. So they have an enormous library of formal methods, processes, reference materials, etc., that they've always maintained, always kept, and always embedded in everyday work for all of their global staff. But they realized that they had a need or an opportunity to capture and share best practices, very informal leading practices that come on the job. So an example might be, you know, what's the best way to set concrete, a certain type of concrete in a certain weather condition or altitude. Those are the kinds of things that aren't often written in the formal methods, but through project experience, organizations will discover these types of things on the job. And what they wanted to do is to be able to capture those in a bottoms-up way, help cascade those and share those, and then build discussions around that so that the organization could be smarter. And ultimately, they could reduce cost and they could improve safety and quality across the board. And they had a lot of pressure to just sort of throw out a tool, you know, throw out Yammer or Jive or one of those tools and just sort of put it out and say, okay, go share. And they could have done that, but instead of doing that, what they did is they spent literally 4 months developing an end-to-end model built around project teams and the project managers for how best practices and insights work today, how they sort of get discovered and shared, and then how a very simple process could be built on top of that with the right incentives around project teams to help sort of capture, but then help cascade and kind of, you know, put down in writing some of these best practices. And they ended up discovering that a social collaboration tool was the right tool used to be able to do this, but they only discovered that after thinking through that end-to-end model, looking at people, business process, etc. And what they were able to do through this in a very smart way is they were able to avoid a very costly investment in brand new platforms, but they were able to just enable some features of the existing platform they used and turn it on. This was an environment that people were already working in, and they were able to put a whole process and again, the right incentives around this in a way that would work for the business. And as a result, they found that within months, they were able to document more than $50 million worth of cost savings and 90% satisfaction from their and adoption from their people. So it's a great example of thinking about the business purpose, the pain points, the use cases, and putting a plan in place around that, and then thinking about the tool last. As an extension of that, I also wanted to just show an example. I had commented that you don't always know every success story and every use case up front, Well, this is an example of a global professional services firm that has a social collaboration platform where they have an ongoing process of capturing and sharing stories of common use case examples and their benefits. And they're out cultivating these types of things all the time and then sharing them back into peers across the firm to try to encourage and promote more use of it. And again, this is all part of that serendipity. And this is an example of what one professional services firm is doing to promote that. So again, another great example of aligning tools to the right purpose. So that's just an illustration of that first lesson. Second lesson, managing digital overload. This is something that we've talked about being an enormous challenge, and this is an issue that every organization has to be thinking about. And the thing that we would suggest every organization needs to be thinking about is to be using some sort of framework, maybe like that 3x3 matrix that I showed earlier, but some way to build a master portfolio of all of the different collaboration tools and apps that exist, and to do this from a business and a technology perspective, to think about what's being used, what's not being used, where are there redundancies, where are there gaps in the need to better meet the needs of the business, and then to come up with a portfolio strategy in terms of the right current and future products that are needed, and then to put the right guidance and training together for end users so that they have a better sense of what they should be using for what purpose. That will and can greatly improve the satisfaction and quality of life of staff across organizations. And again, as an example for this, there was a professional services firm who had this issue of many overlapping tools, enormous spend, business unit silos adopting competing tools with a lot of frustration. And in this particular example, a several-month effort was led jointly by information technology, and in this case, the knowledge management group, where they mapped the full inventory of tools against different business processes and user groups, and were able to make a lot of progress, in particular retiring and eliminating redundancy of a number of tools, eight tools, $5 million worth of savings, but more importantly, identified gaps to create business cases for the right tailoring, configuration, and new investment in areas where collaboration needed to be improved, rewriting user guidance and training, and greatly improving the satisfaction of global staff. So this is a good example of a way that an organization can approach this problem in a very thoughtful and business-led way. Thirdly, I've talked about this at length already, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but again, we want to emphasize that every organization needs to be thinking about collaboration as a business capability, not just a collection of tools. And the key learnings here are there needs to be some sort of business sponsor or leader for enterprise collaboration in any organization, responsible for the entire capability, everywhere from business process mapping through business cases through change management. And that business sponsor should be responsible for following through on KPIs, measuring results, and driving accountability to the right place in the businesses for success. So that's the third lesson. And then the fourth one around leadership, which has been, and I think I emphasized in the example of social collaboration before, often the Achilles heel of many organizations. This is the easiest to talk about and one of the hardest to really capitalize on. And as I mentioned earlier, the biggest challenge with many of these new collaboration tools is that they are a radical new way of working. Content sharing is open. People when they ask a question or they raise something, they may be exposed about information they don't know, and they might be afraid to let others in the organization know that they don't know that. Facebook behaviors often don't translate into work, and ultimately users need to feel comfortable and confident in a collaborative environment when they're working with people that they don't know. And the common pitfall that we see is lack of leadership commitment. So leaders may send out, introductory email announcing the launch of something, and then that's it. And when they don't serve as active role models, that often causes can cause complete failure of the initiative. There was one firm that I'm familiar with where a survey of staff indicated that the junior staff, 45% of the people responded saying they were afraid to post on the collaboration tool for fear of what their manager might think, because they were afraid their manager may think they were wasting time. And when you have an environment like that, users aren't going to be confident, they're not going to be comfortable, and you're not going to get the participation and engagement that's needed to succeed. So what's needed here is not just a plan endorsed by leaders, that's the starting point, but it's accountability and it's visible commitment and effort, including being a role model, an active participant, and driving expectations down to other more junior managers at every level. And there are lots of incentive programs that can be done to encourage that, but ultimately, if leaders are not on board, you're not going to have a good chance of success. So that's the final lesson, and I'm going to actually wrap up the conversation with just a recap of the key points that we've talked about here, which I hope you found useful. Again, I want to emphasize how important collaboration is, again, in every organization, but that businesses and people are overwhelmed. The pace of change is not slowing down in businesses, and nor is the pace of change in the evolution and innovation of tools. This is complex to really think about the right way in terms of aligning tools to the right activities and how people work, and it requires strong end-to-end business ownership and really strong leadership commitment. And I think the final point I would make is, for those of you who are in knowledge management roles, this is an example of the future of KM, and I would encourage all of you to seize this as a core discussion topic for your organizations and in your focus. So I'm going to pause here and thank you very much for listening to me, and I hope that we have an opportunity to have some Q&A right now. So I'm going to pause now, and what I would ask everyone to do, if you have a question, all you have to do is raise your hand on the tool, and what we'll do is we'll come to you and unmute you and let you ask the question online. Do we have any questions? I've got a hand here. Let's see. I don't see, the hand was up, but I don't see it anymore. Do you see it, Ian or Lee? Whoever was raising your hand, if you could just hold the button.
Margo, I just unmuted you, so if you unmute yourself, you could talk.
Okay. Oh, there's the hand again. Did you? I'm sorry, I'm a little bit new to this. I saw a hand got raised and it went away. Okay. I'm not sure who that was. Well, let me, we do have a couple of questions that have come electronically, so maybe I could just start reading these and we can take it from there. Let's see, Nicole Becker, thank you. You said, have you seen examples of best practice KPIs? That's a really good one. I have, but they're few and far between in collaboration. And what I've found in terms of thinking about KPIs is that one good way to think about this is to begin thinking about business outcomes. And when you've got and matching that back to the problem statement and the collaboration capability that we're looking to put in place, and in this case, social collaboration. If we want to use that as an example, the most important thing to do is to paint a picture of what the business outcomes are that we're trying to achieve. And it may be about, maybe built around a particular business process. So in a consulting firm, writing a good proposal, let's say that's the process, and we're going to be putting a new tool in place to help an organization improve how they write proposals. We want to paint a picture of business outcomes, and often when we think about that, some of the success measures of that may be quite obvious. We want to have higher quality proposals so we win more. We want to write them more quickly. We want to have the best insights, et cetera, et cetera. You want to work backward from that and think about measures that you can tie the use of the tool back towards. Some of that's going to come from success stories, people telling you and you surveying people about how successful has it made you, has it helped you save money, has it helped you win more business, et cetera. But you want to find as many ways to do that as possible. Now, there are also very, very critical baseline KPIs that every organization should have to measure things like adoption and participation and engagement. And there are some great examples of dashboards and other key kind of high-level metrics that they put together around collaboration tools. And those are relatively easy to define because many of those tools and the numbers come right out of what the vendors provide. But it's important to think about how to cut that and segment that around in a way that makes sense. So those are just a couple of thoughts around KPIs. There's not going to be one perfect dashboard, but again, the key lesson is business outcomes. So I hope that that was helpful. Andrea Bracken, how would you suggest we go about providing guidelines for what to use when? The tools themselves are very poor in publishing such guidelines. I would totally agree that in many ways the vendors, in some ways they've been great, they've been innovating tools, but in many ways they're the biggest enemy because they are, they're not good at thinking about how to fit the use of a tool towards a particular purpose in an organization. And the most important thing is to apply good business judgment in your organization and to think about a handful of common business processes, common activities where you've got lots of people involved with doing that. And it may be the writing the proposal example that we had before. It may be in an oil and gas company configuring a new well and installing drilling and setting up a new well. And those types of things, you want to think about the end-to-end process of where knowledge is needed, information is needed, where people are discovering new things that they can share, and then to think about pain points using existing tools, existing content, and then where something new might be able to fit. And when you step back and think about it that way, just about the business process, the common activities, that's the best way to think about developing those guidelines. So it's not an easy process, but it's something that if you do it thoughtfully around, again, the handful of most important things that people need to do, you find that that's a great model for giving people a picture of what to do. And I do have some examples from certainly a couple of prior things that I've been involved with that I'd be happy to share, and we could certainly talk offline. I see a third question from Joaquim Stroh. Hi, Joaquim. It's good to hear from you again. And you asked about where is KM in all of this, and in what ways will KM need to rethink the way they work with the organization. I hope I commented on this at the end, because I wanted to make this a conversation where we didn't anchor this just in a conversation about knowledge management, but I view knowledge management it ultimately as an umbrella over all of this, frankly, because knowledge management is about helping organizations get value out of the insight, experience, knowledge, and data that they need in order to do their jobs more effectively. And collaboration is just one way to do that. Collaboration and content go hand in hand as the key linchpins or the key pillars of good knowledge management in any organization. And this is why in the one example I had provided under lesson 2, the knowledge management team partnered with IT to develop an inventory and a game plan for the collaboration tools. And that's because knowledge in that organization, knowledge management felt like collaboration was part of its mandate, since there really isn't another natural owner for this in the organization. It's a group that sits across all the business groups. It's a group that partners with IT, but it's not in IT. At least it shouldn't be in an IT, and it's a great fit. So I view all of this as a conversation about what knowledge management should be thinking about and doing. And I hope that's helpful. And I hope you agree.
Bob.
Good. Yes.
It's Margot Brown. I figured out that I needed to actually unmute at my end, so I do have a question for you.
Great.
One of just your observations around collaboration and the involvement of leadership. So I guess what I'd like to maybe hear from you is, do you have examples of situations or specific contexts within which leadership involvement has worked in collaboration?
Absolutely, Margot, and thanks for the question. And you and I have some shared experiences in the space, as we both know. So a best practice, and I'll give you one example that I lived with, which was just fabulous, is that there was and I don't want to get into the identity of the location or the particular group, but it was a particular business unit where the head person in the business unit very, very quickly had the light bulb go off and say, this capability of social collaboration, with the key features of the tool, if people are using it and trusting it, it can solve these 3 or 4 problems really, really well that we're linking with. And some of it involved about cascading leadership communications from so part of it was this leader wanting to be more effective at cascading his communications down to the troops in his group and having dialogue and synergy around that. But some of it involved helping the organization connect the dots more quickly on key events when a trigger or a key event happened and people needed to mobilize on it and react to it, which was a very frequent thing. The use of email and the phone was really problematic because they were often very, very slow at responding to problems and often didn't react, and that cost money to the business. And so this particular business leader said, I believe this, and here's 3 or 4 ways we believe we can use this that will hit directly on pain points we have today. And what this user did is he did 3 things. The first is that he became a user and a participant and started posting on it every day. And that immediately opened up the eyes of all of the troops underneath him to say, wow, you know, so-and-so's using it, this is pretty impressive, maybe I should get on it. Second thing this person did is went to all of the leaders, the kind of managers, the next level down and the next level down, and said, I'm no longer going to be sending emails to you. I'm going to only be communicating to you through this, this platform. And I expect all of you to be using it and engaging it and building on the kinds of things that I post. And I'm going to have my people track you. And it was a little bit of a fear of God type of thing, but setting the tone that this matters and this is a new way of working. And then the third thing was about really ingesting into the platform a number of kind of key ideas. And this leader found some junior people in the platform to ingest some top and start the use of it in some certain ways where it lined up with the strategy of the group. And this leader went and kind of promoted and celebrated that in the form of you know, the kind of awards, recognition, etc. And that helped really take things off and accelerate it. So that was maybe an example of it. And I'd say a better known and public example of this has just been in IBM. And I don't know if anybody on the webinar is working at IBM or have ever worked at IBM, but you know, when Ginny Romedy took over, that was right when obviously the connections tool was becoming big in the marketplace, and IBM had been through its big turnaround under the previous CEO, and Ginny Romedy basically said to everybody in the organization that our social tool, our internal connections tool, is the only way I'm going to communicate to all of you, and I expect you all to be using this as a way to do business. And within 2 weeks, it flipped the switch. And so that's just another more publicly kind of known example. So those are a couple which I hope help. I see one last question, which is from David Wallace. And let me just read this and answer this quickly. It says, to what degree is the platform helping to define the value of the knowledge? Peer info from social collaboration versus top-down info from a portal, tech support page, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think what you're getting at, David, is how do we think about, well, there's a lot of things here that I think are behind the question, but one big certainly question is that collaboration tools like social collaboration are environments where a lot of new content is created and a lot of knowledge is created and shared. And it's not always authoritative, it's not always approved, it's not always blessed. And it has to be taken, in some cases, with a grain of salt. So how does, you know, how does an organization think about how to value that, you know, versus things that might be more authoritative and more blessed from a central group? And it's probably a much longer answer than we have time now on this webinar because we're just about out of time. But that is a key challenge of any organization, which is the right way to think about that and the right way to share things. So I'm hoping we have an opportunity to maybe talk offline at some point on that. Good. Well, it's now the top of the hour, and I'm going to suggest that that we close off the webinar. And I guess Lee Cohen, do you have any other final words you'd like to say before we sign off? I certainly want to thank everybody for your time and your participation, and I hope you've learned something. And Lee, any remark you'd have before we sign off?
No, just that I'd like to thank everyone for their attendance and participation. We hope that you found this valuable, and we'll be notifying you in future about subsequent webinars. And also, we'd love your feedback, and you received a message that provides a link for your feedback. So please don't hesitate. It helps us get better at this.
Great. Well, thank you. Have a great day, everybody, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Take care.